In this movie, we're going to look at some basic rules of thumb for color correction. Here we have a photo of Marion again. This is a little bit different photo, and it's been photoshopped. And this illustrates a common problem that we see in image editing and sometimes in video as well. It's usually a good idea to keep the flesh tones as flesh. In this case, her skin has a green tint to it. Now, it's okay if the whole image has a cool green tint to it. I love what's going on in the background. I love these colors. It's great. But her skin looks pale and green. No matter what you're doing in After Effects, when you're making this alternative reality, you need to make sure that you're especially careful with things dealing with human beings. Painting, it's the same way. If you paint a landscape and a tree is a little bit off, then people can let that go a little bit. But if you're painting the human face, then something instinctive inside of us knows what a human face is supposed to look like. We know what human skin is supposed to look like. We know how things are supposed to move when it's humans moving. So your audience is going to be much more critical of things that you do relating to human beings. If you had a couch stand up and walk, then people aren't going to be as critical because the couch doesn't walk, so you can make it walk however you want it to walk. When you're dealing with issues pertaining to people, you need to make sure that you're very dead on accurate. And in the case of color correction, we want to try to keep these skin tones as close to skin tones as possible. Now, the next thing we've already kind of covered a little bit, if we hop on over to the Space Needle comp, we want to make sure that as we're brightening and darkening our footage, that we're leaving the highlights bright and the shadows dark. You want to make sure you stay away from the evil brightness and contrast. Brightness and contrast is my nemesis. If you bump up brightness just a little bit or take it down a little bit to darken the image, you're actually adjusting and shifting the highlights and shadows, which is typically not a good idea. Again, if you're using this on vector graphics, that's fine. If you're using this on grayscale images or whatever, that's fine as well, but don't use this on regular footage with continuous tones. Bad idea. And finally, I want to go over to this Angela Overbright, and this photo kind of defies the rules. Really bright brights and really dark darks, but the balance really works. And hey, I get that. This is really an art form what we're doing here in After Effects, so sometimes rules are made to be broken. But as with an art form, make sure that you're breaking rules for a reason. If you're going to have an image that's a strong contrast, or if you're going to have a blue tint or a red tint, make sure it goes with the story that you're telling. If you want to create a relaxed atmosphere, then you don't want to use a red tint, you want to use a blue tint probably. Or if something really intense is happening, you'd probably want to use a redder tint, a warmer tone, rather than a cooler tone. Or if you're doing a remake of, let's say, Steel Magnolias, then you don't want the contrast that intense because it's not that intense of a story. It's a soft, fluffy story. On the other hand, if you're editing an episode of 24 or something that's very intense, then you would want intense, contrasty colors because the story is very intense. So there's just a few rules about color correction. Again, rules are meant to be broken, so use these at your leisure. But just a few things that I've noticed that people could generally benefit from.